What is going on, everybody? BobbyFi with my man Eric Sheets Haber. Looks like we switched places. If you watched our shows a week ago, he was at home and I was on the road out in New York in the sun, and he's out in the sun now, and I'm here. But it doesn't stop him. The man had a good weekend. Sheets, why don't you tell us a little bit about that, and then we'll jump into the baseball slate.
So I'm gonna talk about that within the context of touting our site. So True DFS, I don't know if it's gonna be live today, technically, or tomorrow. We're pretty soon where it's gonna be premium for some of the stuff. And people are asking me how I won the hockey showdown. By the way, by myself the other day. I was all by myself winning the hockey showdown, and all by myself in third. Okay, in the same thing. And then I chopped the NASCAR big one as well for like 5K, and I got like 15th in that also. And people were asking me how I did it, and I'm just being true transparent exactly how I did that. I couldn't tell you how to pronounce any of the hockey guys I played. I couldn't tell you how many tires are on any of the freaking cars that I played either. Okay. But what I did was I ran my projection models, which I can do, pretty quickly from where I am. I accessed my various sources. I aggregated it in the way I did. I built my model and I ran it. And then the first thing I did was I put it on the site for everybody to see, right? And then I took my exact projections as I had them. I uploaded, and this is for both hockey and for the NASCAR. I uploaded my projections to SaberSim actually. And then I did the sliders where I accounted for a moderate amount of ownership fade. And this is a little bit of the art of it. A little bit of ownership fade, a little bit of randomness. And I just ran that. I ran it for 20 lineups. I didn't even look at what they were. I put the 20 lineups in exactly as is. And that's how I did it. Okay. So it's not like I did extra research, not like any particular thing. It's just the way I always do this with my projections, with my models, and using SaberSim to help me randomize and optimize things. So that's exactly the way I do it. That's exactly the way I'm almost always going to do those types of sports. And makes me wonder why I don't do that more often, except for, putting my opinions, sometimes in there on sports that I quote unquote know more about. So that's how I did them. I'm very fortunate enough that got there for me. And, if you guys are in True DFS, I'm not saying that you're going to be able to do, to win like that, but you're literally going to be having the exact same things that I have in the other sports that Bobby knows about. I obviously value Bobby's opinion, and I'm going to use what Bobby says to help me, whatever. But aside from that, I mean, you go to True DFS and you access that stuff. You're going to have to learn how to operate it, whatever. But that's exactly the same stuff that I was using to build these lineups that won. And that's just all I have to say about that.
Yeah, man, great job. I'm really impressed by what you put together there. If you haven't done it yet, guys, take a look at this before we end up going premium, which is going to happen in the next day. So you might want to take a look at today's, and there's some great information on there. Anyway, Sheets, that was a great job. Let's get into today's slate if you're ready. And hopefully we can keep the good vibes rolling.
Yeah.
Man. It was
now, what do you want to do? Do you want to share your screen? Do you want to share your screen? You want me to share? What do you want me to do?
I'm tweeting something out at the moment. Give me a minute and I'll share my screen if you want, because I think it might make it easier for you. I should have probably prepared with my other monitor today, but I wasn't, after 4th of July, it's hard to get everything together perfectly.
I mean, it doesn't matter. I could just share I could just share the DraftKings screen and have it up, and it's fine.
We can do that. If you can do that, then let's do that.
Yeah, all right. Let me get that up. Hold on a minute. Let me fire one up here and then create new lineup. Okay. Did you make it so I can share? Hold on, let's see. Okay, let me see.
We should be good.
Okay, it looks good, right?
Yeah, looks good.
Okay.
So Atlanta, Milwaukee. Do you mind starting it off while I just get this thing out?
Yeah. So again, and if those of you that look at at the stuff that I have up there now, I mean, just so you know, I mean, it's these are early numbers, early looks. And, I haven't been really good about updating the baseball stuff, towards lock, which I'm going to be doing more often when I'm back. I'm away for today. And so what ends up happening, and if you just rely on my stuff, I'm telling you, like yesterday, there was like guys that weren't playing, you know what I mean? Like, so you just keep that in mind when you're looking through this. So Atlanta, Pittsburgh, I have as the first one. And I actually have no interest in either of the pitchers, but Atlanta was, for me, one of the top options hitting wise on both DraftKings and and FanDuel. Did you feel the same way, or where are you at in this game?
I'm not sure how I feel about it, to be honest with you. I have 3 stacks that I like a little bit better than everybody else. And I understand they may be somewhat chalky, so maybe I'll have to get a little bit different in a few places. But I initially, for once, I don't have Atlanta as one, which probably means they're going to go ahead and score 20 runs again, because the last time I said that, they scored 20 runs. I tend to give a little bit of park factor downgrade to them here. They certainly make a lot of sense, but I don't think you're getting any sort of ownership discount. Well, I guess you are. You're not going to have too many guys too popular because they're kind of expensive. I mean, it's crazy. You got Acuna. Oh, I thought it was at 5. Yeah, he's at 5.9. Freeman's 5.8. It's a team, but it's not the team that I'm focused on today, I guess is what I would say. I do think that both Freeman and Acuna are terrific one-offs, but I don't really have this stack quite as high as a few of the other ones I've got. And I do, fair enough. On the other side, I do sort of like Fried. I understand Pittsburgh doesn't strike out a ton, but we're talking about worst offenses on the slate. And on FanDuel, with getting that extra quality start and likely win possibility for Fried in this matchup, I think they're, what are they, a little over 2.5 to 1 favorite. I definitely have some interest in that. So I don't love, he's not the ideal guy to play for DFS, but he's a really good real life pitcher. And he is a guy who I will be mixing into my player pool. And I probably am going to actually might have him a little bit. There's an interesting conversation between he and another guy who sort of goes a very different route coming up very shortly. So in Musgrove, Musgrove has the blowups in the superstar games. Fried is pretty consistently really good. So I think they're actually closer. And I think if you get significant ownership discount, he's one of the pitchers I'm looking at for sure. The next game. Go ahead. Sorry, go ahead.
I was going to say, my connection is a little worse, so I'll let you kind of just like lead in. But as Bobby was saying, like the next game, features I presume the best pitcher on the slate. I mean, I do like Woodruff quite a bit. I have him as over Musgrove. I have Woodruff as the top pitcher on the slate. And the weird thing is that and I'll just put it out there, while I wouldn't play this guy on FanDuel, just the other guy, the Mets pitcher is super duper cheap over there. So I don't know if you're going to want to double pay up for bats on FanDuel, but there's him. And I actually have another guy on FanDuel that I might pay down for also if I don't play Woodruff over there. So I was going to ask your opinion on McGill. I didn't quite get to him too much on DraftKings, which is like, I guess because he's a little expensive over there. I guess 7,200. I expect him to be less. But I do have Woodruff as my top pitching option. And I didn't get to the Milwaukee or either bats, actually.
So I think McGill is like super talented, young guy, good arm, really big. I think he's got a big future ahead of him. What worries me a little bit about him versus some of the other guys you'll compare him with today is strictly just how far in the game can he pitch. Now, he did throw 85 and 92 pitches his first 2 games. And that was against an Atlanta team that's pretty loaded, one of those games in Atlanta, and he pitched pretty well. 8 strikeouts in the last game in 5 innings. Now, you'd want the 6 innings if you want to play someone on FanDuel, so it gets a little tricky, but I think that there may be room for him to get to that 6 innings because if he throws 90 pitches and it goes well here, this Milwaukee team, we know that they've been so much better. Obviously, they've been the hottest team in baseball, but they still are not like as potent a lineup as the Braves are. So I think you can make an argument for McGill here on both sides. Personally, I'm not playing him on FanDuel as of right now. I don't find that I need the savings as much, but I actually think he's more interesting for me on DraftKings as an SP2, where I have a slew of guys, in the 7,200 to 8,700 range that I'm just sort of like okay on. And I could see McGill with the strikeout upside surpassing some of those guys if it fits a certain build. So I'm a fan of both pitchers in this game, like you. You even look at the totals in this game, and it's below 8. Both teams projected below 4 with a below 4-run projection. Milwaukee barely has a higher projection than the Mets do. So Woodruff is my number one. I don't think that's anything revolutionary. I think he's the clear number one pitcher on the slate at 10.4 is too cheap for him, and I think he's fine on FanDuel as well. But McGill is absolutely in the mix for my secondary pitchers. I played one lineup this weekend of any kind, and I only had time to get one thing in an afternoon slate before the big one sold out, unfortunately. So literally, as I was trying to put in the big one, I couldn't do it. I had to put it in the $15, and I finished 20th in the $15. I think I would have found in like third in the big one. But it was a starting pitchers from the same game. People just don't seem to do it, even though they're both pretty high owned. So I'm into this game. I'm into the pitching. I like Woodruff and McGill. I will not be touching any of the hitters. Although a contrarian Milwaukee stack is definitely interesting with how hot they've been, I just don't think I'm going to end up doing it today.
Yeah, sorry about that. I faded out for just a second there, but I did hear you.
Can you pop your screen back up?
Yeah, I'm going to reshare my screen. Sorry about that.
No worries.
Okay.
So, we can go to Cleveland and Tampa Bay here, and this is the other one of those pitchers, right? Okay. I'm curious to see where the ownership actually ends on Rich Hill. I think on FanDuel, this would be your other play. That's what I found anyway. 7K on FanDuel. Yeah. And I think that he's going to actually get some ownership there. But we all know the dangers of Rich Hill. But at some point, the upside outweighs them, especially when you have a bunch of medium rating pitchers and Cleveland who struggles with lefties in a big park downgrade for Cleveland. Rich Hill at times is – when he's really on, he can be one of the, I don't want to say he's one of the best pitchers in baseball, but at times, going back, 8 years now when he was a Dodger and 6, he's always been that guy who can put up the 30 plus fantasy points. And I think that stands true today. So I'm interested to see the umpire data. He does have a 5.5K prop, which is a little bit above what we have for Max Fried. It's the same as what we have for, actually, I don't have a K prop on McGill yet. But I would imagine they're going to be similar. I bet he's 5.5 as well. So I think probably not for me on DraftKings because it's maybe I just saved the extra money and there's guys who I like just about as much. But I really think on FanDuel, Rich Hill does have the upside to go out there and potentially win you a slate. I think he's going to have some ownership over there, but I still have a lot of interest in him. How about you?
Yeah, that's exactly what I was going to say. When I was talking about the McGill, is that the preferred spend down on FanDuel would for me be Rich Hill. And maybe it's weird, but I kind of feel comfort in when you say that it's going to be owned a little bit, you know what I mean? Because every once in a while I get these cheapo FanDuel guys that's like 1%. I'm like, maybe I'm just missing something. I just never do anything. I actually, for whatever reason, maybe this is bad, but I do kind of take some comfort in the fact that some people that know what they're talking about want to play him.
Right.
I don't think it's going to end up being, through the roof chalky. You know what I mean? Like it's going to be Woodruff and I presume Musgrove will still be top, I suppose. But I do like him over there. And I didn't get to any of the hitting. Did you?
I might even reconsider what I said. I might actually play him on DraftKings as well. I didn't get to the hitting either, but I do want to say that Rich Hill, this is the lowest. Cleveland has the lowest run total on the slate right now. Although we don't have Washington's in yet. I'm guessing they're going to be similar, but a 3.49 run total. I'm just getting more into the Rich Hill idea. I certainly think you could do it. Logan Allen and the Cleveland bullpen we can go ahead and pick on. But I personally stadium downgrade or whatnot. Any of these righties are good. You can always mix in the lefties just to mix it up. Wander Franco now has hit over 5K. I don't expect him to go back beneath it the rest of the season. You have guys like Zunino who hit left-handed pitching well and have a ton of power. There's things to like about this. I'm pretty dialed in on my favorite stacks, and there's a lot of good reason I like my stacks, which we'll get into. So I don't personally see myself deviating, but certainly, in a Rosarena, a Margot. I can't believe I'm now saying the Margot name all the time because he's shown some power this year. Even a Brousseau potentially. You could make a cheap stack a lot of different ways here with this team. You also have the pinch hit risk with some of these guys, but the main bats that are expensive, I like Franco and Rosarena the best, followed by Brandon Lau, even in the lefty and Mike Zunino. but I'm not going to personally find myself doing a ton of it. So, go ahead.
Is this next game one of your better stacks? The White Sox Minnesota game?
No.
Okay, so this was weird because I actually did a preliminary run, and when I ran my stuff and I ran my lineups, neither of these teams actually popped as like a particularly great play. But for whatever reason, when I actually ran lineups with ownership fades and all this other stuff, I got to just a great amount of the White Sox for some reason. So I'm gonna probably honor that a little bit and play some of that. And the fact that I don't know, maybe they'll be low owned as also. So I'm kind of into that a little bit. I'm not I didn't get to either Cease or Ober in my preliminary list of pitchers really. But then again, I was pretty greedy about what I wanted to play. I didn't really not make too deep of a dive. But I do again, just transparency right now. The White Sox are just showing up for me a decent amount, so I gotta keep an eye on Moncada, see if he's back or not. They said he was gonna be back, but you're not sure. And then I did get to a good one-off. I had that Trevor Larnach as a good one-off for Minnesota, and that's pretty much all I had from that game.
Yeah, Larnach is a priority play for me today. I'm going to keep doing it while he's cheap. I think he's actually swinging the bat pretty well. He's a much more talented guy than maybe people give him credit for, batting in the middle of the order. And he doesn't get ownership too high, even at 2.7. So he's the highest priority for me. Kepler doesn't look right at all. Kirilloff, I might have rated a little bit ahead of Kepler. I don't mind any of those bats against C's. At the same time, like maybe if you are playing a bunch of entries, you should be getting to some C's and maybe even some Ober, but more likely C's. I feel like I'm just not getting there. And I do think you can get a lower owned Chicago stack against a team. I mean, they just got to Ober in his last outing pretty good. So I don't mind, that we just saw this. They tend to even out, when we go back and against the same team. But he's had two rough starts against the White Sox this year, and with that lousy bullpen behind him, I certainly could see the argument for playing the White Sox here. Maybe playing all Chicago, because we're going to get into my favorite stacks in a minute, which I think are going to be pretty clear for most people. But I have these guys written up just beneath them. I don't mind your boy Sheets. I don't mind taking a shot on Gavin Sheets at 2.6K if you want to take a home run swing. Guy's hit 2 home runs in 6 starts this year. He's got tons of power. We know that. So I wouldn't mind taking a shot on him at 2.7. And you could get the cheap guys, he and Larnach, and then you use your stacks elsewhere. So I kind of like those guys.
So when I first ran my stuff, both the teams from this next game emerged as top plays. I mean, specifically by a pretty decent amount. So I was, it's so funny when I first looked at it, I saw the Cubs, were top ranked. I didn't know who they were playing at first, so I just presumed they were playing in Coors. But then when I looked, I saw they were playing in Philadelphia. I was going to ask you, is there going to be like that Chicago wind? Is that it? Because that's kind of what I would imagine would make them project so well, is because of the wind. Is that the case?
Yeah, you got like 11 miles an hour right now blowing out to center on an 88-degree day in Chicago, which you don't get those temperatures in Chicago. Anytime it's above like 5 miles an hour blowing out, actually it's up to 14 miles an hour right now. Anytime it's I would say really probably more between 8 and 15 miles an hour, then you get into some serious business. But also with the humidity and the heat factor, you're going to have some real possibility to hit a bunch of home runs here. So I'm a fan of attacking this spot. Tell me what you like.
Yeah, so I like both these teams quite a bit. The guy that stands out is on the Cubs. I mean, you could pay up for Baez and Bryant and Contreras at catcher I had, and then I had Marisnik was really cheap to fit in there also. And then on the Philadelphia side, I mean, the usual guy, Real Muto at catcher. I've been paying up for catcher, maybe more than I should, but I always like paying up for Real Muto for whatever reason, whenever he's in play. And then I liked Segura. He stood out for me as kind of like the top value, kind of like a one-off value play. But I think both these teams, like you said, are pretty in play.
Yeah, so here's how you do it, in my opinion, because I think you have to get creative if you want to try to find a way to get different on a chalky stack. So what you do is you can play Ian Happ at the bottom of the order, batting eighth probably. At 4.2, you could play Nico Horner, which is not thrilling because he doesn't hit a ton of home runs, but as a part of a stack, he's going to be low owned. And you can play Rizzo. People aren't going to play Rizzo in the lefty-lefty matchup. So I think if you're going to make a 5-man stack, you try. And then the last guy who's actually my favorite is Patrick Wisdom. Now it's nice that he crosses positions with Chris Bryant, but you can actually play both of these. You can play Wisdom, Rizzo, and Bryant in the same lineup. You play Rizzo at first, Wisdom at third, Bryant in the outfield. So I really like doing that. Baez is my favorite play. He's also the one who's going to get a little bit less ownership. I mean, honestly, because of Tatis getting more ownership and then Tim Anderson getting some. So I really like Contreras Bryant will be the most popular, I believe. And I think Wisdom, I mean, look, they're going to have ownership and stuff, but I love playing Patrick Wisdom here. The guy's got a ton of power, hit a fly ball that goes out in this kind of weather. And Marisnik, you mentioned already at 2.6 as the other cheapo. So this is a game that I'll be heavily focused on. And I like both sides of it. I initially was going to be more focused on the Cubs, but I'm sort of coming around a little bit more on the Phillies. It's the usual suspects here. It's Bryce Harper, Real Muto. Like, that's an interesting decision right there. Real Muto versus Contreras, because I think Contreras is going to be the more popular. Well, I think they're going to be both really popular, but I do like Real Muto a slight bit better if they're going to be, price and everything considered. The other ones, the thing is though, other than those guys in the Phillies, only one who's going to have a ton of ownership is Segura. And I'll just say, like, I like Segura as part of his stacks today, and he's cheap, so you can fit him in and use him as a one-off for sure. The only thing I'd say is that he's the one who probably benefits from this weather the least. Doesn't have a ton of power. In general, you think, okay, well, that would hedge some of that. But the truth is, he doesn't elevate the ball very much. He hits the ball in line, he hits line drives, he hits ground balls, and maybe not quite as interesting. Maybe a guy like Odubel Herrera I think he'll be very low owned. I think Alec Baum is going to be very low owned. So that's sort of what I would be looking to do if I was going to be mixing in some Phillies. And oddly enough, Rhys Hoskins, our former favorite guy, is going to be unowned. So I don't mind going any of those directions if you're going to make the Philly thing work. Because I really think you want to try and prioritize this game, getting at least a few players in, if not your stacks from this game. And I have a lot of near full game stacks. I might even go full game stack 4-4 on FanDuel. I really like this spot.
I presume that. I thought you were.
No, go ahead. You're good.
I was going to just move on.
Yeah, move on.
Yeah, I presume that that Kobe Allard is going to be somewhat popular SP2, just because he's going to project okay and he's playing Detroit. I mean, that's why he's going to project okay. And I agree with that to some extent. I mean, I think he's a legitimate SP2. I mean, I would prefer to get to both, Musgrove and what's his name, and Woodruff, or maybe even Rich Hill, than having to play Kobe Allard. But again, it's still, even though Detroit's better, it's still a good matchup for him. And he's, he's going to show up. I mean, I'm going to get to him in 20 max, that's for sure. And that's where I'm going to be. And I didn't really quite get to either of the hitters, the hitting in this game. You know anything about the Peralta guy from Detroit? You like anything in him? You like Kobe Allard? You like anything else in this game?
So Allard in my first build was the guy I was showing up as my SP2, but yeah. I don't know how great I feel about that. I believe in the kid's talent. I think he's good facing Detroit. That should be enough of a reason. But when you weigh him out versus, Fried just being a little bit more, McGill being a little bit less with a similar type of situation, but McGill's got probably a little bit more K upside. I don't know. I'm just sort of stuck with it. And then also I even have Mike Minor on my list as well. So I'm sort of struggling with that SP2, and he is one of the guys in the mix. I just, I don't know where he's going to end up by the end of the day. He does have a 5.5 K prop, give him a little boost. I mean, he's 7,900. That's a pretty decent K prop for this slate on that, at that price. And I like Texas. That's my thoughts. I don't think much of Willie Peralta. I think you're going to get a bad bullpen behind him. And I don't think, I think on this slate, people will play Joey Gallo. And unfortunately, I've gotten him wrong on a couple nights after he put up 7 million fantasy points in a week. He literally had one of the best weeks we've seen. I mean, it was pretty incredible. Go 5 straight days, hitting at least 1 and 2 home runs twice, and 7 home runs in 5 days, and ended up, I mean, just putting up monster numbers. So I think that Gallo and David Dahl, I don't care. When guys get this cheap as David Dahl is, I just don't care anymore. Like, I understand he's coming back from an injury. I know he was terrible before, but he was starting to get it together a little bit. I just don't think he's one of the worst hitters in baseball, and he's 2.3. We already mentioned Larnach and Marisnik, who I like a little better, but David Dahl would be the next value guy I'd be looking at in the outfield. And then your catcher is, I mean, hey, this Jonah Heim, not Jonah Heim. If they were to use the other kid, but Jonah Heim is going to be batting in the middle of the order. You can make an easy, really cheap stack. Eli White is also 2.6K. It's a pretty easy, cheap stack to make if you want to go that direction, and I don't mind it. I have Texas just beneath the other ones, and I do think that they're going to be a little bit more off the board outside of Gallo, and maybe Eli White gets a tiny bit of ownership, but I played him yesterday on the afternoon slate, and he was 7% owned. So on a full slate, it's hard for me to imagine him getting too high ownership.
For what it's worth, again, and I just kind of misspoke with respect to Texas. I alluded to this a little bit earlier in an earlier video, that I'm like kind of working on this beta testing thing about this this tool that just rates stacks, combining both leverage, ownership, and everything. Mm-hmm. Actually, if I had to identify right now which would be the best team for that, it would actually be Texas. Mm-hmm. The combination of their, they don't rate to be the best stack, but they're going to be just so low owned, I think. Mm-hmm. That I think it'll make up for that. But the guys, I didn't see it again. This is like an early look. So I didn't even have that guy you mentioned is even playing. So I didn't even have Dahl playing. So he's not like showing up for me yet. I have the other guys you mentioned. I have Eli White, Joey Gallo, Garcia. I have a Nate Lowe actually somehow, and Jonah Heim. So you got to just watch who's playing, I guess, and then I'll just do another run later.
Yeah, Mondays, Wednesdays, and Thursdays are the days you tend to get the most shuffling. Oddly enough.
Okay.
All right, so let's talk about Kansas City, Cincinnati, because this is I could see the argument for both sides of doing whatever you want here, taking the bats, or in Miner's case, taking the pitcher. Miner's been absolutely dreadful his last few times out. I think it's more of an aberration. I don't think that he's this bad of a pitcher. He does have a 5.5K prop on the slate today. I know Cincinnati's good against lefties, but they have huge stadium downgrade leaving Cincy. They do get I wish it was, I mean, in a funny way, you almost wish it was in a National League park, though, because you'd like to get the pitcher spot in there if you're going to play Miner. I sort of like the idea of a low-owned Miner here who does have upside, who does have a leash, who, a week and a half ago, we would have been jumping to play him in most matchups or a couple weeks ago at this price. I mean, he's not that far off when he was putting up 31s and 20s and all that stuff. And he, even against Boston, a few starts back, he put up 21. He had some tough matchups, but he also just hasn't pitched that well. I'm willing to take some shots here. I don't know how necessary it's going to be because I do like the other guys, but I feel like that about all these guys have question marks, from McGill to Allard to Miner, and there are different types of questions, and Fried, different types of question marks with all of them. But he is a guy who's on the list of the question mark team for me, and I like that he's going to be low owned. I also don't mind if you want to take Cincinnati or KC and stack either of those teams. It's just not the way that I'm building today.
I like Miner about the same as Rich Hill as far as an SP2 on DraftKings. So he's certainly an option. It's a scary option because, I mean, Cincinnati can hit, right? Yep. But it is a better, it's better ballpark for him than having to play pitch in Cincinnati, I guess. So yeah, I think Miner's going to show up as an SP2 for me on, a decent, I would imagine on a decent amount of lineups. Like if Allard's going to show up, I can't imagine, or Hill's going to show up. Can't imagine Miner not showing up too. So yeah, he'll be in there. And then I actually, as usual, like Kansas City as a value stack. I think they're just going to keep showing up. And if you want to play, you don't want to play Contreras and then you don't want to play Real Muto, you could play Salvador Perez and
greatest hitter ever.
You could always do that. And then there was other cheapos, and I don't know if O'Hearn gets the right. He gets the right-handedness, right? Yeah, okay. And I like what's his name, Michael Taylor, even for cheap. Mm-hmm. And then what I like about Kansas City is, and Soler even. What I like about the Kansas City is that you always want to play Merrifield, and he's always like really expensive. But all the other KC guys are like, and Perez too, right? He's expensive too. But all the other KC guys are really cheap, so you could just kind of just get them in and just and just do it that way. Yep. So I do like Kansas City. They're a top 5 stack as usual, and yeah, that's it.
Yeah, God, man, I really thought they was going to get it with KC. I think Michael Taylor left like 11 runners on base or something. It was really, really crazy. Every time he was up, had the bases loaded. He did have a double, like an RBI double, but I was ready to print my money. I was feeling so good with my stack, and then I couldn't get that big Michael Taylor at 1% ownership to come through.
Yep.
I'm never going to fault anybody for playing either side of this. The only player I really have as being really popular would be Benintendi for KC, coming back from the injury. And I think that's legitimate. Like, the stolen base upside does really make you feel good. I'm looking at the ownerships for Cincinnati, and I have to probably get even if I think about minor at some point, I think that not even just a hedge full stack, but like Suarez, Castellanos at no ownership against the lefty. I'm definitely interested. Tyler Stevenson back in the middle of the order against the lefty, along with Jonathan India. That's a really, really good 4-man right there. And then you've got Aquino, who you could throw in at 3.1. So I actually like Cincinnati maybe a little more than I said at first. And I could get behind the KC thing. I'm just not getting to the full stack. I did like what you mentioned about Perez. And one thing you could do, again, to differentiate yourselves in tournaments is you can stack the Cubs or Phillies or combo stack that game and then use Perez as a one-off as your catcher. You know what I mean?
Ooh,
and that's nice. That's just a clever way of trying to get a little bit different. Now, yeah, those other catchers might be involved in the mix or whatever, but if they don't hit, if Perez comes out and hits 2 home runs and they have 10 fantasy points each, which would be fine for your stack, you're going to want those, you can get different with that. And you're actually adding probably the best hitting catcher of all of them. So I think that's a really good, really smart move. All right, Boston and the Angels. Nice hitting weather here in LA. The greatest hitter to ever apparently play baseball by 500 times. I mean, this guy, can we just have a quick Ohtani second here? It is ridiculous what this guy is doing. I mean, it's out of control. We think it feels like every game he hits a home run, because every game he hits a home run. And then when he doesn't, he hits 2. I mean, these are his games in this month. I mean, 30, 18, 18, 2, 17, 11, 40, 14. This is DraftKings, 30, 39, 14, and 8. So like, okay. So you're like 60% of the time to go for a home run or better. And, 1 home run every other day. He hasn't gone more than 2 days without hitting a home run. And in the last, 2 weeks, and he's hit 2 home runs in four of those games. This guy is just a monster, man. Like, always a priority. I don't care if it's a lefty. No one's going to play him at 6,200 today, which is the first time you'll hear that all year about Ohtani. I really don't think anyone's going to play him. I would take that shot. And I think both of these teams are stackable. I'm probably not going to stack either of them because I like the other stacks I like too much better. But I mean, it's going to be hard to not at least have a little bit of interest. You can also mix in the Rendon with a cheap Phil Gosselin to fill out a stack at 2.8K. And then Max Stassi as your catcher, and boom, you're off to the races. So I do like that against Perez if you were to go that route. And on the Boston side, look, JD Martinez against the lefty is more than a thing. He's the number 1 play over here. I don't know why the early projections have Bogarts so high. I like Bogarts, but he's just sort of another one of the guys here for me. Kiki on FanDuel and Hunter Renfroe are the ones who stood out. But JD Martinez is definitely – JD and Ohtani, obviously they're going to be hard to get because they're expensive, but they both stand out as, really, really likely to hit home run spots.
I feel as though these and again, this is instinct more than anything else, that Suarez and Perez are those pitchers that people like to try to pick on but never actually get anywhere trying to do it. People try to stack against Suarez and he just always survives. People try to stack against Perez, he always survives. And there are guys like that, and so I'm not really getting to too much Boston as a stack. No. Like you said, I mean, Martinez is, against lefties is pretty damn elite. And the Angels look fine to me. I have them about the same as like the Padres or something like that. And the 6,200 in and of itself doesn't really bother me. again, just because we play DFS and we're not used to all these guys over 6K, that doesn't mean that they're not under, you know, who knows? They could be worth they could be worth 7K, you know, it's just because, you know, I could point to guys that are 5,800 that are not even close to as good of a chance of have no chance of outscoring Ohtani. You know what I mean?
Right.
So, you know, it is somewhat relative. So I think the Angels are fine. I don't know, just kind of the way I play, if I'm going to get there though. I don't know if I'm going to be able to get to the Ohtani type, well, stacks, right? But I don't know if I'm willing to pay 6,200 as a one-off each. I don't know if I'm going to play him, but like you said, a lot of people are going to think the same way, right? So as you mentioned, you know, the opportunity. I mean, Ohtani's been like, you know, the chalkiest player on the slate, you know, 40% of the time in the last couple of weeks, and you're going to get him when no one has him. So is when he scores 25 fantasy points, you're really going to care if if you paid 62 or 55? You know what I mean? Like, it's really not going to make any difference. So yeah, I'm on that a little bit.
Yeah, so that's my thinking, is that a lot of, and I'll just talk real quick about DFS strategy. Like a lot of guys have said, and a lot of guys will say that you don't necessarily want to use expensive one-offs sometimes, because if you're playing them, the chances are people around them are doing well and putting them in position and all that stuff. I think there's exceptions to that, and I don't entirely agree with that even in general. So what we mentioned it about Perez being one of them. I think JD and Ohtani both make for terrific one-offs, and if I was going to do anything with this game, I'd be mini stacking like a 2 or 3 man. I don't think I'd be fully stacking at all. That is because my third favorite stack behind Chicago and Philadelphia is the Padres. Leading into the next game here. All right, guy. It's like, okay, so I do like Musgrove, first of all. I don't think that I don't love him, and I feel odd playing him at Chaco. Like, the funny part is you look at him lately, and he hasn't been great. I mean, he pitched actually a good game against the Dodgers, a good real life game. Struggled with Cincinnati, didn't even make it into the 5th inning. You've got him, you know, previously, he hasn't put up 20 fantasy points since May. So we, you know, maybe factor that in when we think about playing a guy at like what's going to be 45, 50% ownership possibly. So that's the one thing I would say about him. I don't think you need to leverage and get a different stack against him or anything like that, but I am not playing John Lester, and I am completely all over San Diego I shouldn't be, but will be low-owned stack. I'm ready just to fire away and play everyone. Favorites would be Tatis, Machado, Myers, Pham, Caratini as your catcher. I really like this spot here for them. I think that if they were, you know, obviously the weather is not as good as it is in Chicago for hitting and all this stuff like that, but still plenty good enough for me, and I will be happy to stack the Padres tonight. So I have the Cubs and Philly. The Cubs 1, Philly 2 as of right now. And Philly, I actually think is closer with the Padres. So maybe I'd have the Padres 2, just ahead of the Phillies for a full stack. But I do like some of the Philly one-offs. Yeah, it's a monster lineup that I don't think is going to have too much ownership outside of maybe Tatis today, which is really, really weird against John Lester. So that's the way I'm going. I also think Trent Grisham and a lefty with the stolen base upside is well in play as well.
I agree with that. There are two stacks that two other stacks that fit that kind of bill that I described with Texas. It's just like maybe it might not show up as like the greatest value in the world, but given how they're going to be owned, they just provide an incredible amount of upside and leverage. One of them was actually, I just forgot. I just dismissed as I talked about. One of them happens to be Boston. I'll just throw it out there. And the other one, probably on par with Texas, is San Diego for me. So I'm very happy to hear that you're really, really on that. And I'm going to do it. that's the way it is. So I'm going to point out the guys.
Go ahead. Sorry.
Oh,
I was just going to point out. Sorry. No, I was just going to say they're going to be popular on FanDuel, I think, more than DraftKings, but still not too popular. Sorry, Sheets. Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I wasn't even looking at FanDuel. I was just looking at DraftKings. Yeah. And I was going to play, it's going to be tough because, the guys I want to play are going to cost me. So I don't know. I'm not going to be able to get to Musgrove in these builds. I'm going to have to play something like, one of those SP2s that we talked about. But I do want to get to the top guys. I want to get to Machado, Pham, Tatis, Myers, Cronenworth. You know what I mean? Like I want to get to those guys and and maybe not. I mean, Caratini's obviously always fine in the stack, but I do want to pay for those guys. So to get to them, I'm not going to be able to play Musgrove and Woodruff together, which is fine. I'll just hope that maybe you get a good game out of Minor, a good game out of Allard, a good game, even the Met guy, whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know if I can do it with Rich. I don't know if I can do it with Rich Hill either. Actually, that's but I'll figure it out. And I agree with that. And I'll play. I'll have Musgrove rated well, like everybody else will, and I'll get to him. And you know what? If I don't have 100% of him, that's fine too. If I only have 30% of him, that's fine also. He's just a guy. I think that both. I think, as a matter of fact, I think. For me, if I'm going to be honest, right now, I don't think Woodruff's that great either. I think they're all there. I think I like them both, but if there were a way where I had to play, for example, like Allard and Minor together, so and then I could easily get all these freaking Padres in, and maybe then throw in a one-off in that Cub game or something like that. I don't have no problem fading both those pitchers in the name of double paying down for a pitcher to do that. So I'm into the Padre thing. I could live without Musgrove, or I could live with him depending on what the rest of the lineup looks like.
Yeah, it's for me, it's an ownership thing with him, but I agree with what you're saying. Like, if you look at the prices and the positions, it's actually, of all the teams I talked about that I like stacking, the Cubs sort of make the most sense with either Texas. I'm sorry, the Padres make the most sense with either Texas or Philadelphia. It's really hard to get the Cubs, and that was my priority, get the Cubs and Padres in together. That's a tricky one to do, but I still think it's worth trying, and you can do it easier on FanDuel without giving too much away. I've done it on FanDuel in my initial build, so that's what I'm looking at.
I'm not saying that fading chalky hitting is always going to work, right? But we're kind of cavalier about it. We say, dude, it's baseball. You know what I mean? But you just saw it. You just saw like a lock freaking spot. 4 days in a row, bust 4 days in a row with Cardinals in Colorado. You know what I mean? Right. It just happens, and if hitting environments are going to be that chalky, you just shouldn't play them. So, depending on what they make of this Cubs Cardinals thing, not Cubs Cardinals, Cubs, whatever. Mm-hmm. If both sides of that end up being, getting all the love, I'll go with the guys, the other teams you mentioned. I go with the Padres, I go with Texas. Me, myself, I'll go with the White Sox, and let it beat me. That's just the way I think. I think that's the way you're supposed to play baseball, and what do I know?
No, I hear you, and I there are certain spots where I like it a little better, and I only like that Cubs thing one of the days, and I was wrong. I'm sorry, the Colorado thing this weekend. I didn't like. I wasn't that into it the rest of the days, and I just pointed out, that these Colorado guys, everybody thinks that everybody coming in, like they know how to pitch in Colorado. You know what I mean? They actually have guys who are familiar with pitching there. I know they still give up runs because their bullpen's bad, and these guys aren't the greatest pitchers, but they're effective enough at limiting enough damage to stop you from winning a GPP. It's not like they're just getting the goal for the first time. But I think that, picking on Matt Moore and John Lester feels a lot better than trying to just play guys because they're in a stadium. For me, it's not just that. And that's why I'm a little bit less on the Philly side, because Zach Davies, as much as we talk crap about him, people talk crap about him all the time in DFS, he doesn't strike guys out, but he doesn't give up hard contact, like ever, And, even if they just need a 360-foot fly ball, they still have to get the ball in the air against him. And he's going to do his best to make that happen. I have the Cubs still number one and San Diego number two, with Texas, with Philadelphia as maybe part of a game stack, maybe a mini stack, and then Texas as a mini stack as well. But most of my main stacks are going to be Cubs and Padres tonight. And I think there's a lot of value you can mix in outside of even getting different with the pitchers. You could play the cheap Trevor Larnach, the cheap Sheets who I mentioned. We talked about David Dull, Eli White. There's even Segura is too cheap. So there's enough value of guys, and Herrera in that game. Herrera is probably my favorite Philly today. I was all ready though, before we are done talking about baseball, I was all ready to take my golf victory lap on my Joaquin Niemann winning it all. And I actually had my buddy bet it for me. And guy doesn't bogey a hole. He goes 72 straight. And then he bogeys the first hole in the playoff. That was a little frustrating. Anyway, Sheets, any other final thoughts on the slate?
No, I'm not going to be able to join you live tonight. Okay. And so Bobby will take you guys home as far as that goes. And that's about it.
Yeah, and when Sheets isn't here, I'll just throw this out there. I usually like to do them from 6 to 6:30 because especially when it's just a baseball slate, there's not as much to go through. And it does, I'm still working on it. It's much, much better now that I'm using the restream stuff. But it still does freeze up my computer to the point where I can't actually make lineup adjustments. So I can't quite go all the way up to launch. But people seem to be okay with that. And then I just answer questions in Discord, and we usually get a bunch of them in there. So hopefully we'll see you guys then. And hey, let's have a great week. Sheets got off to a great start for July. Let's catch up with the guy and make a little competition. We'll have some competitions running on the site, by the way, about who's doing the best and things like that. Not necessarily for money, but just in terms of, big tournament wins and things like that. All right, guys. Well, good luck to everybody, and we'll see you at the top of the leaderboards.